Hey everybody, welcome back to Full Circle with Joyce. Now, high school students contemplating obtaining a university degree, as well as the long-term unemployed who feel the need to retrain themselves in a different profession, are typically faced with that challenge of, fine, I want to go back to school, but how do I finance my studies? How do I meet the cost, the increasing cost really, of a higher education? And that often exceeds whatever limited financial resources many of you might have. And numerous programs and methods of financing education fortunately do exist today in helping aspiring students obtain the education that they so desire or require. And we're going to be touching on some of those methods in just a bit with my guest here. His name is Dr. Idle Omar Farah, and he's the Vice Chancellor of Umma University. Karibu sana to the show.
Thank you very much.
All right, Dr. So just reflecting on that statement that I've made there, and I don't know, you can look at your own university and talk to us about the sort of number of students there that have required financial assistance. But it's a big issue today. Economic times have been hard on many people, but as well, the cost of university education, you know, it's a premium.
Thank you very much, Joyce. Good morning, everyone. All people who are watching Switch TV this morning. It's a great pleasure to be here and to talk to the young people, because education is the beginning and the end of socio-economic development of any country, and particularly in the world. And in these times of coronavirus infection, education is always very helpful so that people can adhere to some of the things that the experts are telling us. We cannot just talk about student financing in higher education without looking at the whole context of higher education in the country. Starting from government and the private sector players with regards to higher education in Kenya and beyond. The four key pillars of universal, because universities are by nature universal, is to provide access, to provide equity, to provide relevance, and to provide quality. Once we are able to take care of these four issues, the financing issue will be somehow embedded within this. In this day when university education is not just a physical face-to-face contact, that you can do your learning right from here in Nairobi and be in a university in Australia, or be in a university in the UK through open and distance learning. All these things have changed the way we think about concepts of higher education finance. So if I discuss this issue, and starting from government itself, because as a government, one of the key things that we have to provide for the populace is access to education. Right from pre-primary all the way to tertiary and university education. And as such, the government takes the first obligation in trying to ensure that students who have transited from high school into university are able to access this university education.
Do you mean that in terms of government-funded scholarships?
Absolutely. Public institutions, public universities.
What is our track record on that, though, so far?
And it has gone beyond public institutions, because the government is actually also involved with the private universities and private institutions. So the government essentially has come up with what is called the Universities Education Act, which is passed in 2012, the law that regulates higher education in this country, and set up a number of institutions. Some of those have to do with funding, and one of the ones is the University Funding Board, the UFB. Essentially, all students who apply through government and get the admission through government, their tuition is paid for by government through the University's Funding Board. Whether you get admitted in a public institution or whether you get admitted in a private institution.
Do we know how many students that UFB is targeting, for example, or what is the size of that fund, and how many students
over the last 10 years, generally it has oscillated between 60,000 and 80,000 students that the University Funding Board are able to take care of.
Okay.
But remember that directly from high school, about 125,000 students do qualify with a C plus and above to be able to access education.
So only meeting about half.
Which is about half, yeah. So the idea was then that while government has responsibility, it can only cater for up to about 80,000 students. What happens to the rest? How do we allow them this access? So the first big chunk of students that are coming out of directly high school are actually taken care of by the government. And then we look at how do the rest of the students finance.
Okay. So for those who are, taking care of government, that's covering their full tuition.
It will cover their full tuition, and it will also allow them access to the Higher Education's loan board, where they can get some loan to take care of their food, accommodation,
right.
Generally their upkeep and their living
right.
Costs, so that they can pay for the hostel, they're able to pay for their food, and they're able to buy books, and so on.
Okay, so let's talk about the students then who are not able to get access to this government bursary.
So the majority of these students will fall in a series of categories depending on the universities that they attain. Obviously, the majority of them will be self-sponsored students. In other words, their parents, their guardians, the people who take care of them are able to afford the fee themselves. And therefore, they are able to pay on a semester-by-semester basis. And that's what the majority of the students in the private universities are capable of doing. However, they are a whole series of organizations, both governmental, non-governmental, charitable organizations, and individual university-initiated efforts to ensure that once the students are come to their university, they are able to access, in one way or another, some financing mechanism that will be able to help these students.
Right.
Different organizations then organize themselves in different ways to ensure that they're able to attract the best students to undertake this. I think we can get into the criteria for having
Yes, and I actually want us to do that now. As I described to you guys some of the different ways in which people finance their education these days. There are need-based scholarships or grants and bursaries. There are also merit-based scholarships and then private loans. So we want to touch on at least those three today. And let's begin with the need-based educational grants or bursaries. These ones, a student needs to demonstrate significant or substantial financial need. What is some of the criteria that is used to measure how substantial, whether that need is substantial or not?
So the need-based essentially are students who attain the grades that they need to attain to attend university, but they're simply just not able to afford the fees to pay. And especially those who are going for very expensive or high-end professional courses like engineering, like medicine, and so on, because the tuition is also based on the kind of intensive courses that will cost higher as compared to other less intensive courses. And that's not to say that they're better professions, they're just more expensive. I mean, an engineer will just require so much equipment, a doctor will require so much equipment as compared to the one that is doing economics or other social sciences. So the organizations, let's start with private sector. A lot of big corporate private sector have established university courses, scholarships and bursaries and programs. Let's give an example of Equity Bank or Kenya Commercial Bank, the Wings to Fly program. These are established. We know exactly when they will be advertised. The students who qualify, the qualifications are all there. And majority of this, including charitable organizations, including faith-based organizations that fund, will want to support the one that is the farthest away.
Right.
the one that is the poorest.
Okay.
But the one has also excellence in terms of the grades that they have attained.
Right. Okay.
So the marginalized groups, the gender issues, the disability issues, the merit issues will all come in to this. And these are already well-established programs. They will have a particular period of the year when they will be advertised.
Right.
Students will apply. And once you get into their program, they don't restrict themselves just to the scholarships alone. They do mentoring.
Right.
They give you attachments. They give you internships,
Right.
so that they also prepare you for the market
Right.
later on.
So it's very important, and I think it's important for us to say that also for the students who are watching this, or potential students, very important for them to stay up to date with the information, you know, keep searching and keep looking, because as you've mentioned, there's a certain time window at which these applications are received, and thereafter it becomes a bit more challenging. So it's not that there are no scholarships out there, but we also have to be proactive in terms of searching for them and applying for them at the right time.
That's right. I think the idea is students and parents need to be on the watch out, because these things do arise.
Yeah.
One person did a bit of research and looked at what do international NGOs give in terms of scholarships, the USAID, the other Aga Khan Foundation, and so on. What do international faith-based NGOs like the one that's supporting Umar University Direct Aid International advertise for this? They have looked at what county governments do. They have looked at how much money county governments are spending on bursaries for students who come from those respective counties. They have looked at members of parliament and looked at CDF and so on, and the bursaries that are given. When they added up all this, they actually realized that the amount of money given or available almost equals or surpasses the number of student needs that are there.
Wow.
So the difficulty part of it today would be, how do we link the student who needs to where the money is available? I guess this is the biggest issue.
So what is
Number
that gap
two
in
is
your
that
opinion,
how
though?
do we communicate
Yeah.
to this? Because this student is not going to go and buy a newspaper, print newspaper, to read and check at the end of it whether there's an advert there or not. How do we get to these students? How do we get to the parents to be able to link the available money that is? For example, Umar University has set up a 2.2 billion shilling fund. Not so much to give us bursaries, but to give us interest-free loans in different percentages, starting from an 80% scholarship and 20% loan to a 100% interest-free loan.
Okay.
This is available to students who come into Umar University. Once they have been admitted, they can access this money and they're able to pay for their entire, but at the end of their training, and as soon as they're able to pay, they will refund back these monies in an interest-free loan.
Okay.
Do Kenyan students, the 125,000 we're expecting from the 2019 KCSE, even aware that Umar University has that kind of a program? And how do we ensure that we come out of our elitist ways of doing things to ensuring that the student in Siaya or the student in Lamu or the student in Maralal is able to aware that they can access this?
Yeah. So what is Umar University doing to bridge that gap?
So for us right now, it's still a long way short. What we have done is that we found it's too much of a burden for the university itself that is providing education every day. We are hustling with ensuring that students get a good quality education.
Right.
It will be too much for us to be the ones
the
doing the disbursing, getting lawyers to sign, getting guarantors to do this.
Right.
So we have partnered with an entity called the Africa Educational Development Trust, which is an NGO by itself that we have entrusted all these funds with, who manage on a day-to-day basis. The Africa Educational Development Trust, we launched this program in 2018 initially, but we relaunched it in December 2019. And now they are on social media, they are on TV adverts, they do mentoring programs, they visit schools even while the students are still at Form 4, for them to be aware that this program exists.
Okay. All right, so we've dealt a lot on need-based grants, and just again, the language here is very, very important. Even as you're looking for, financing for your studies, grants typically do not have to be repaid, same as scholarships.
Absolutely.
But then there are loans, and there are those that are with interest, and the ones that you've said are interest-free.
Interest-free.
So very important for us to also be very mindful of that language there. But merit-based scholarships, a lot of people really also look out for these ones. These ones award exceptionally high well-performing students. So when we say merit-based, this is on, how well they did in school.
The examination.
Right. And that is often, blind to whether they have the means or don't have the means. This is just to celebrate their
Absolutely.
achievements in school. Okay. Does Uma University also offer
Yes,
those?
you're quite right, Joyce. I think for students with mid-grade of A who need to undertake specialized courses within the university, and also to ensure that you attract the best students, because the idea is the students on average will affect each other.
Sure.
If you mix them in a way that you have A grade students, you have C plus grade students, chances are that then overall the university will have a good grade by itself. And therefore, to encourage as many top performing students to join the university, then it's possible that we give them this. But again, the idea is it's not just the scholarship. They must also undergo extra things like community development, mentorship, internships, to expose them and give them an edge over all other students who are just coming to study there.
Okay. Dr. Let me ask you two questions here as we wrap up this interview.
Yes,
number one is, are these scholarships available to those pursuing postgraduate degrees, say master's programs and beyond?
Absolutely, and it's there are organizations that may do scholarships for postgraduates, but majority of the organizations do loading system.
Okay.
Because you also have to look at the sustainability of this fund.
Sure.
If you continue to give scholarships, you will run out of the money.
Yeah, that's true.
And you will not be able to help the students that will come 10 years down the line.
Okay, okay.
So the idea is that majority of the time, these are students who are either working and they're doing distant learning, evening, weekends, and so on. They should be able to afford
at least a good portion.
Installments payment.
Okay.
Yeah. So the majority of postgraduate is actually on short-term basis.
Okay. Finally, this is my very last question. I do need to wrap up here. But Carol from Juja is asking, loving the conversation, and would like to ask, what if one has a diploma and wants a scholarship to a grade into a bachelor's? Is that possible?
At Uma University, that is very much possible.
Okay.
In fact, those who have come from certificates and joined diploma will also have access to some diploma scholarships. But those with diploma and transiting into degree have access to the 2.2 billion fund.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
but
right.
they must have a distinction in the
Sure.
diploma.
You need to have done well.
Yeah.
Very important, and it's always important then to always do well in life, right? You never know where that's going to take you. I've been talking to Dr. Idle Omar Farah, who's the Vice Chancellor at Uma University. Thank you very much for your time. And your website? For those who want to get in touch, yes.
Umma, umma.ac.ke.
All right. And that's where I'm sure they'll be able to find all the other additional information they would need on this.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your time.
And we have the latest in terms of infrastructure. If you're on Namanga Road, you will actually see this university.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Great. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
And
guys, we're going to take a short break now. But when we come back, still on the way here on Full Circle with Joyce, we're going to be jumping into our DIY segment. Today, we'll be teaching you how to make Ankara bow ties. And then in our second hour, you can look forward to hiking for beginners, as well as some relationship advice. All of this up next on Full Circle with Joyce. Stay tuned. All right, guys, welcome back to Full Circle with Joyce. Thank you again for your company and your feedback on our previous segment there. Carol, Frank, Asante Sana, B. Watt Van Seki or Van Sheki, you say you give student loans, thank you, but shida ni wapi kazi, you say. Peace Michael says, hello Joyce, do ask him what happens to those who don't get the required grades and they don't get chances to show their skills, and yet they want to advance their studies. Oh, that's a tough question, because he did mention that they do need to have a certain threshold as far as even admittance into these institutions. I'm not really sure how to answer that, and unfortunately that segment is over right now, but it's something that I think our team can consider as far as how to address in future. Maybe we'll even call him up and get that answer. I don't know. We'll see what to do with that one. But thank you very much, Peace Michael, for your feedback and your comments. Do keep engaging with us here on the show.